so many new pieces to this IU football team.
To me, that's going to set the tone on how you get ready for games on Saturday in the fall.
I would put that Indiana room up against anybody else in the conference, and that's something that we typically don't even come close to saying.
If you want to get total sickos committee about it, there's a position battle at long snapper too.
This is the Hoosier Huddle Podcast, part of the College Huddle Podcast Network.
All right, welcome to the Hoosier Huddle Podcast presented by Heartwork Brewing and heartworkbrewing.com. If you're in Bloomington and want a beer or pizza, head over to Heartwork Brewing, and here's some information from our friends over there.
Heartwork Brewing, we are fiercely independent. From our variety of craft beers to our artisan Neapolitan-style pizzas, we put our heart into our work. We offer a full menu of draft beers, from our award-winning lagers to IPAs, sours, even our house-made seltzer. Our Northside Taproom has a variety of events and spaces for groups of all sizes. Heartwork is proud to be a locally and veteran-owned business here in Bloomington, just a stone's throw from Memorial Stadium and Assembly Hall at 1703 North College Avenue. Visit heartworkbrewing.com for...
All right, heartworkbrewing.com for hours of operation. TJ, how are we doing? How are we feeling? Indiana coming off a 63-10 beatdown of Illinois, which apparently Indiana's won by too many points, and now Illinois is a nobody.
Right.
You know, that's how the goalpost moving works this week. So quick thoughts on that, and then we'll get into the game this week between Indiana and Iowa.
So I think the excuses that are in place there, Illinois' secondary was depleted. Duke was overrated, so Illinois beating them isn't that impressive. That was a bad targeting call on their safety.
I've seen worse.
You name it. You name the built-in excuse. Even if all of those things end up being true, Indiana still destroys them by 45 plus. I think that what you saw on Saturday night was a perfect game plan and very nearly flawless execution from a group of players that was completely dialed in.
They even survived some early mistakes on that 59-yard touchdown pass. So, Indiana
nearly flawless. Still a few things there, but I think that Saturday night was a really good illustration of everything that we like about this program and this coaching staff right now. The execution was really good. There was just a level of physicality that Illinois was not prepared for. And Brett Bielema is a coach that prides himself on his teams being the more physical team in the fight. And that did not happen for Illinois on Saturday. I thought that Indiana dominated both lines of scrimmage.
Agreed.
In a way that Brett Bielema probably was more upset about than anything.
Yeah, when you talk about the defensive line dominating, Mikael Kamara didn't have a stat. Now, a lot of that is because he was being put into a headlock by the offensive line, but there are also plays where he's being double-teamed and pushing the offensive lineman and collapsing the pocket and allowing his teammates to go get those sacks, like Mario Landino and Tyreek Tucker and things like that.
They were both outstanding on Saturday.
And then the offensive line they made them quit.
Exactly. Yeah, I know that, there was certainly some press after Kurt Cignetti talked about stealing Illinois' soul. making them quit. That's exactly what happened. I don't know what's the problem with pointing it out. It was very obvious to anybody watching the game.
They pointed out when, Brett Bielema puts it on, they made Duke quit, or Ohio State makes everybody else quit and stuff like that. So it's
312 rushing yards to 2, 312 to 2.
And most of those came in the second half.
They did. And that's Indiana could have scored more than 80 fairly easily if they wanted to. They did not throw the ball nearly at all in the second half. Fernando Mendoza was done after 3 quarters. I'm not really sure. I didn't view that as, there's Indiana running it up again.
No, this was,
That's
and
not what
I
happened.
think it was the Cover 3 podcast, because I think Tom Fernelli's an Illinois fan.
Yeah.
It was like they said, we're just going to run the ball, and we're going to run it right at you. And it's
With
up to you
backups, by the way.
Yeah, with with Kobe Martin, who ended up being the game's leading rusher. So it's not running up the score. And you know what?
And if they did, who cares?
Exactly. All these national people, Indiana. Well, for Indiana to make the playoff and be good in people's eyes, they're going to have to win by these big margins, because that's the narrative you set. And then they get upset and cry because they're following the narrative that these national people set. So let's move on to
a couple of individual standouts real quick beyond Landino and Tyree Tucker, who I thought deserve any praise that they got. I thought Isaiah Jones he had a particular sequence that was, while the game was still competitive, that was really stand out back to back. One was a tackle for loss. The other was a sack. I thought he was really good. You mentioned the busted coverage at the back that gave Illinois that 59-yard touchdown. That's the one area that kind of appears to be repeating from week to week. And that was mentioned by Aiden Fisher in terms of wanting the defense to communicate better. And it was mentioned by Kurt Signetti again, and still wanting more from his safeties. So that was kind of the one negative that you could look at from the game. I thought Fernando Mendoza, again, incredibly sharp. He's red hot at the moment, playing as well as any quarterback in the country. And Indiana's receivers, it does feel as if they have kind of established themselves nationally as certainly a really good two-headed monster, and then E.J. Williams making every play that you ask of him to when he's targeted as well. So I think that continues to progress. And then Kobe Martin, again, showing up when he's given the ball and making plays. So I do wonder if we begin to see Kobe Martin start to get some playing time in competitive situations, not just end of game. Not that Roman Hemby and K'Lon Black aren't playing well, but I do think that what we're seeing from Kobe Martin is not a fluke.
No, I think he steps more into the Lee Beebe role as time goes on, to where those carries get split up a little bit more evenly. But man, Roman Hemby was terrific. K'Lon Black was terrific. And it was the atmosphere at Memorial Stadium was terrific. Whoever the announcer was, I think called Kurt Signetti Frank Signetti a couple of times, but that's okay. Both were butt kickers. So let's get into IU at Iowa. IU comes in ranked 11th. They have the path to the playoff is illuminated. I'm not going to say it's easy. It won't be easy, but it is clear. Beat Iowa. You go to Oregon the next after a bye week, and you got Penn State looming there at the end of the season. If you go 10-2, you should be in, but we'll see. So
do you buy the kind of storyline or theory that has been kind of posited by a few different national writers that IU needs to split the Oregon and Penn State games in order to get an at-large spot. I think that's an incredibly high bar to clear.
Well,
just to become one of the 12 teams. There's a lot of variables and things to play out that are going to reduce or enlarge the number of at-large positions that are truly available. But I find it difficult to believe that if Indiana has wins against Illinois in the fashion that they beat them at Iowa, if they get this one, plus a few other very solid teams on the remainder of the schedule, and then just has losses to top 5 teams on the road at places that are nearly impossible to win, I find it hard to believe that that's not enough at the end of the season. But
I mean, everybody keeps moving the goalpost. Well, not everybody, but the national.
Many.
A lot of the national media keep moving the goalposts. Mm-hmm. Now Illinois doesn't really count because it's the same thing they did with Nebraska last year. I watched the game Nebraska played before IU, and they're talking, Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt are talking about Nebraska being a playoff team and 5-1, and they're ready to roll, and maybe they could compete for the national title, and then they come in and get their rear ends handed to them at Memorial Stadium. Everybody was on it. Oh, Illinois is so good. They're really, really good. They beat South Carolina in the whatever Cheez-It Bowl.
So much production back.
5 offensive linemen coming back. Hank Beatty's an All-American, and he's really good. And Luke Altmaier is the best quarterback in the Big Ten, and all this stuff. And now Illinois stinks, which is not true. They're a top 25 team. They're still at 23. We'll see what they do against USC. But here's the way it's probably going to play out. Oregon and Penn State play this week. One of them is taking home a loss. Then it'll be, it's a one-loss Oregon team. They, are sleepwalking, and Indiana snuck up on them. Not saying that Indiana is going to beat Oregon, but let's say that happens. And then let's say the opposite happens. Oregon beats Penn State, and at the end of the season, Ohio State beats Penn State before. Well, now it's a 2-loss Penn State team. And they're kind of reeling after the Ohio State game. And you know what? If Indiana beats them, now they're a 3-loss team, and they totally underperformed. That's how I see it going, because that's what the national narrative is, and nobody pushes back outside of the Indiana, media. You have, people could say whatever they want about Heather Dinich, but nobody pushes back on these people. They're the experts. Well, the experts don't really. They spell the Elijah Surratt's name wrong. They get a lot of things wrong. They try to cover the entire sport and don't know what they're talking about on a micro level. But let's move on to IU at Iowa, because I could go on an entire rant. Maybe that's something for the chat later tonight. I thought Iowa Rutgers was going to be one of those 6-5, 7-6, whatever, 6-4, 3-2 game. Ended up being a Big 12 shootout at 38-28. I'm not sold that Iowa's fixed that offense. At least the passing offense. They open the game with a kickoff return touchdown, and this is as an IU fan, you're very thankful that Brendan Franke is on your team, because he has been elite at kickoffs. I don't think he's had a kickoff short of a touchback. There might have been one, but I don't think he has it. Now, Mitch McCarthy was off the injury report. He's one that you would need back. Yeah, he is 30 of 31 on touchback percentage. That's pretty darn good. I mean, he came in at a 80% or 81% career touchback percentage, and it's only gone up, going 30 of 31. So I think that might negate Iowa's returner a little bit. but you're still going to Kinnick. It is a Iowa team who has a little bit of momentum, and we've seen it before. A top 15 team with postseason national title hopes goes in and comes out with a loss, whether it's they didn't play well or the crowd affected them or Iowa just mucked it up, because that's what Iowa does. They play really, really good defense. They run the ball and shorten the game, and you just don't have enough opportunities to score. Now, if IU scores 24 points, they probably should win this game. What are your first thoughts on Iowa?
Yeah, the kick returner and punt returner, you're talking about Caden Wetchen, very good player. Now, I think that preparing for Hank Beatty, you're going to use that same preparation here. You have to be aware of it. You have to game plan for it. You have to minimize the threat that presents to you, whether that's punting directionally away from him to reduce return opportunities, or in the case of going against Illinois, barely punting, or on your kickoffs, making sure that there's an emphasis on getting that ball through the end zone to prevent a return. So that's the special teams side of it. Attacking Iowa's defense, you know what you're getting with an Iowa defense. Parker continues to be the defensive coordinator there. He's been there forever with Kirk Ferentz. You know exactly what you're going to get. That's an extremely fundamentally sound defense. They do a really good job tackling. They do have a couple of really good defensive ends that can provide pressure. Max Llewellyn and I forget Ethan Herkett. Llewellyn and Herkett, pair of good ones. Graves is pretty good as well. It's a good front four. This Iowa defense, not as strong in the secondary as they have been in the recent past. I do not think that they have, going back kind of the last probably half decade, I would guess that at all times, every year, they've had at least one pretty high NFL draft pick in their secondary. I do not see that in their current secondary this year. Somebody might develop, but right now I don't see that. So I think that is an area that Indiana can have some success, particularly with IU's receivers. I like those matchups, Surratt and Cooper and Williams against that secondary with Fernando Mendoza and this offensive system. I like that matchup. Running the ball, Iowa's better against the run than they are the pass right now. Only giving up 2.25 yards per rush. Indiana will certainly be the best running team that they've gone against. Iowa State, for as much as they talk about being, a physical mash unit with Matt Campbell, that's not really what they are this year. The Cyclones have not been great offensively. And Iowa did a good job against them, but that game is always kind of that way. I think that the success that Ethan Kaliakmanis had with Rutgers on Friday night, I think could be sort of a good preview for what IU's passing attack tries to do. But I think IU will be capable of finding more balance than Rutgers was able to.
And if IU gets out to a lead, their defense is much better than Rutgers.
And that the other side of this, Rutgers' offense is better. It is improved and has improved the past 2 years. Last year, it took a step forward. This year, it's taken another step forward. We know what they want to do with this game. We know what Kirk Ferentz's goal is going to be in this game. It's going to be get to third and short, convert on third and short, and then drain another 2 to 3 minutes off the clock in the next series of downs. And do it again and again and again until you've you look up and Indiana's had 6 possessions in the game, and it's really close in the fourth quarter. That's the exact game plan that I was going to want to follow. Indiana's going to want that tempo to be picked up some. I think that makes first down incredibly critical for Indiana to get Iowa off schedule.
Yep.
They've got to get them off schedule with tackles for loss or sacks to prevent Iowa from just being able to get into those 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2. They'll run quarterback power with Mark Gronowski all day if they need to. He's a big quarterback. He's physical. He's a good runner. Not the most fleet-footed. He's not going to kill you by getting around the perimeter as Colton Joseph did. Gronowski is more of a physical quarterback power that's going to look to pick up 3 and 4 yards a carry and rush it, 15 times, just pounding it in the middle and picking up 3rd and shorts or even 4th and shorts to keep the ball for Iowa. So I think that first down, whether or not Iowa's able to stay on schedule or if Indiana can get them off of schedule and force them into being a one-dimensional passing team, then I think Indiana really likes where they're at, being able to tee off as a pass rush unit. And the secondary against Iowa's receivers, I'd say advantage Indiana's corners. I don't think Iowa has particular difference makers at the receiver position. So I think that's kind of the overarching theme of the game is who controls that tempo, what pace is this game going to get played at, and the best way for IU to control it is by getting Iowa off schedule on first down.
Yeah, and Lou Moore's lawsuit is the hearings going on right now as we record and trying to keep up with that. Nothing has been decided yet, but the NCAA is arguing that he should refile in Indiana and not in Texas. So we'll see where it goes. That could change a lot of things. Byron Baldwin at safety hasn't played. He's also, Sig said at the press conference this week, Sig said that he'll learn more today about that injury, which seems to me, I'm not a doctor, but that seems to be that they're reevaluating something.
Mm-hmm.
Because he said about a month ago that he was day-to-day, and then on Monday said he will know more sometime on Monday, but that's never going to go public until maybe Thursday when he does his radio show. So that's something to watch for. We'll have all the little more updates, but I think you're right, TJ, on offense. IU's going to have to either pick up the pace or be really efficient in scoring, and they have been. Since outside of the first game, they've been really efficient in scoring touchdowns and putting points up on the board, where if this is a 7 or 8 possession game, you're probably, if IU scores 5 touchdowns or scores 4 touchdowns and a field goal, you feel pretty good. And then on defense, you hope that Lou Moore is able to play, so you have some depth back there, experience depth. It is a real tough place to play, and if you're starting somebody who hasn't started at safety in quite a bit, it's going to be difficult. But these are the games that are won on the line of scrimmage. One of Iowa's offensive linemen said this is the most physical game that we hope to play, and they're going to feel us whether win or lose or whatever. Which kind of says how much belief does Iowa have in winning this game, which is odd as well. But this is, going to be a line of scrimmage game again.
Yeah,
we both said it in last week that if IU won the line of scrimmage against Illinois, they were going to win the game. So let's move over to IU will raise the victory flag if TJ. IU will raise the victory flag if this happens.
Yeah, I will say if Indiana consistently pressures Mark Gronowski or gets into the opposing backfield. So Iowa has, I know that the Pro Football Focus rankings, particularly for offensive linemen, is not without its flaws. However, Iowa currently has the top-rated offensive line on Pro Football Focus, and 4 of their offensive linemen are the top-ranked at his position, with the 5th starter being 2nd in the country at his position. That seems almost impossible to me, given that Iowa's rushing numbers aren't staggering by any means. But again, those are not my numbers, so I can only just parrot what Pro Football Focus has. But I think we can all be in agreement that Iowa does have a good and physical offensive line. So I think Indiana will be challenged to replicate or come close to replicating the success that they had on the front against Illinois. But I do think that it is a key for Indiana to consistently be in that Iowa backfield, disrupting that offense. Because again, I think if you let Iowa control the kind of the script that they want to follow, this game gets very scary very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, it's Kinnick. It's already scary to go in there as a ranked team and things like that. IU will raise the victory flag if they're efficient in scoring. That means you're not wasting your trips inside the 40. You're going to need to figure out where Nico Radicic's range is from or Brandon Frankie's range is from, because 3 points could be huge in this game as well. So any trip inside the 40, the opponent's 40, you need to score points. That's how you beat Iowa. You cannot have empty trips. Sometimes settling for a field goal is better than going for it and missing it on 4th down. But you need to, inside the 20, you need touchdowns. Inside the 40, you need points. IU can't have this happen. We'll start. I'll start, TJ. You alluded to it. IU can't let Iowa control the pace of the game and control the clock, because they're going to want to limit possessions and they're going to just bleed it down and do what Iowa does. And like you said, before you know it, you look up at the scoreboard and maybe you're down 13-10 and you're like, oh man, it feels like halftime. And all of a sudden there's 5 minutes left in the game.
Yeah.
And it goes quickly. So IU can't have this happen.
I think you could point to turnovers as kind of an extension of kind of those empty possessions, right? That's certainly something that IU cannot afford to turn the ball over, but I think in general, they cannot afford to get flustered or rattled by the atmosphere and environment. This is the first of a few very hostile environments that IU is going to face. Kinnick Stadium is really tough. Indiana has lost their past 4 games there by an average of 20.5 points per game. I think it's fair to point out when mentioning that stat that Curt Cignetti was not coaching Indiana any of those trips to Iowa City. This is a different Indiana football program, but Kinnick Stadium is still tough for any team in the country to face. So they cannot afford to get rattled. They've got to learn pretty quickly how to handle the noise, whether that's with silent counts, communication to the offensive line, making sure everybody's on the same page on defense. All of those kind of procedural issues have got to be razor sharp. And if you can do that at Iowa, that gives you confidence in 2 weeks going to Eugene. that, hey, we've been through a tough environment. We can do this. And then you can build on that. Going to state college, you can build on that. Hey, I know that West Lafayette is not going to be as tough just because the team on the field, but still, that's going to be a rivalry game.
It is
on
the
the
most
road.
hostile environment on the planet, TJ.
On the road, right? That's going to be on the road. So there's a lot of tough road atmospheres coming up. This is IU's first opportunity to deal with it. And that's how they have to approach it, not as a burden or a hindrance, but as an opportunity to prove that you're capable of doing it.
Yeah, and that's the 2 times they went into really hostile environments last year at Ohio State and Notre Dame. They Ohio State, the environment got them. Not only was Ohio State very, very, very good, that they pinned IU down on that closed side of the open. Well, it's open, but then they closed it, so it's not a horseshoe on that side of the field that's kind of open and with the students, and it was just a wall of sound for 2 quarters, and IU just couldn't get out of their own way and get off of that side of the field. Going to Notre Dame, I don't think the noise affected them as much as maybe it was the stage and things like that, but the narrative was they couldn't beat a ranked team. They beat Illinois. Well, narrative is that Illinois stinks and that win doesn't count. Now it is, can they go into a hostile environment? Because this is what they brought in Pat Coogan for. This is what they brought in Zen Mikulski for. They've played in those environments. They know how to win in those environments. So can they kind of solidify that belief? Hey, we know how to handle the noise. We're not going to have, them timing up the snap count for 3 quarters of the game where our quarterback has no shot at being able to do anything. So it's got to be a fun one. So before we get into picks and best bets, TJ, let's look at the Hoosier Huddle Pick'em leaderboard. Your self-imposed 1-week stay at the top has been extended. TJ is in first place at 23-17. 1 game behind is Michael Pollan at sellout Merchants Bank Field at Memorial Stadium. Changed it from sellout to Rock. So I'm waiting on my Merchants Bank check. So if you're listening, please send one. You could leave it blank. I'll fill in the number for you if you don't want to do all that work. I am in second place at 21-19. You have a 3 at 20-20. And then a whole bunch at 19-21, 18-22, 17-23. Still wide open competition there. Picks will come out this week as well. They didn't have IU on it last week. Maybe they'll have them on this week. But let's get to best bets, TJ. Indiana is a 7-point favorite, 7.5-point favorite, which is shocking on the road. As soon as the Illinois game ended, well, not as soon, about an hour after, I looked at Bet ESPN, and it was IU -2.5, which is what I thought it would be. A 1 possession, basically a toss-up game at home, or, Indiana might be the more talented team, but playing at Iowa is worth some points for the home team as well. What's your take on here? Yeah. -7.5, over under 48.5. What's your play here?
And it is on the ESPN Pick'em contest this week. Although, curiously, Alabama and Georgia is not. But
I guess anyway. the narrative changed.
Yeah. This is a very difficult one because every part of my kind of brain would tell me a team coming off of a remarkable monument, like statement win, that Indiana had, and then going on the road to play Iowa, a very tricky opponent in your first road game, and that line getting bumped immediately up above a touchdown, everything would tell me out of principle to take the home underdog. I'm not going to do that. I'm taking Indiana minus 7.5, and I'm doing it, one, because of we say the term blind faith or blind trust in Kurt Cignetti, but it's not blind. We've seen the man do this now for 1.5 seasons, plus the history that we know about with James Madison and his previous stops as well. He's 15-2 as the head coach at Indiana. 15-2. I did not look up what his record against the spread is at IU, but it's probably pretty close to that. And I do think that this game will be tricky for Indiana. However, I really like the matchup of IU's receivers and Fernando Mendoza against Iowa's secondary. I do not think that this Iowa secondary is as good or really as close to good as the secondary that they are typically known for. I think there's holes there. I don't think they're really good at safety, and I don't think they're really good at the second and third corner positions either. I like Indiana's ability to have success through the air, and I think that this defensive line will be up to the challenge of at least matching the physicality that Iowa brings. So I'll go with Indiana covering the 7.5, and I'll go over the point total.
Ooh.
Yes, over the point total. I think Iowa will get a couple of big plays, but I think the over largely being carried by Indiana's passing attack finding success. And then once they have done so, opening it up to run the ball, as we've seen IU do time and time again, following that game script of using the pass to soften up that run defense and then just pound it on the ground as you build that lead. So I think they'll follow a similar script and be able to carry this over plus IU covering.
Kirk Cignetti is 14-3 against the spread at IU.
There you go. So the Old Dominion game would be the win, but not cover.
Correct.
Okay.
And then they did not cover, I think, against Ohio State and Notre Dame last year.
Right.
But yeah, it's tough to pick 7.5 on the road at Iowa, especially in a game that they're going to want to limit possessions.
Right.
So that means you're essentially going to have to win by two possessions. Yeah, I'm gonna give my prediction now. I'm gonna say Indiana's 31 and Iowa's. Yeah, you know what? I think Indiana's 27, Iowa's 14. I'll take the under, which I know I don't like to do, and then I'll take Indiana with the points. But I think 27-14, Iowa's going to score twice, and just limited possessions. If Indiana could get, I think IU wins this game if they score more than 24 points.
Yeah. I think that's a safe assumption. I'll go with Indiana 35-21. 35-21. I do think this will be uncomfortably close for a majority of the game. And that's something that feel however you want to feel, but a uncomfortably close game at Iowa does not mean that we need to freak out or panic. It's the way it's expected to go. And hopefully the players are equipped to handle some game pressure, handle some pressure on the road in that environment. I think we're going to. It's a really good test, and I think it comes at a good time to have the bye week after this week to rest up, because I do think that this team will need it after a pair of physical games. Illinois, I know it was a blowout, but still, that's a lot of energy expended in preparation, emotional energy, both during the game and before and after. And then going on the road to Iowa for your first test, it's going to be physical. It's going to be emotionally draining. So I think the bye week's going to come at a really good time, win or lose.
Yep, I agree. And then, you kind of hope it doesn't follow you hope the end result is like the Michigan State game last year. But I think if you fall behind 10-0 to Iowa, you're in bigger trouble than falling behind 10-0 to Michigan State last year.
Yeah.
Because they will take the air out of the ball and just sit on it for 45 minutes if they can. But yeah, bye week comes at a perfect time, win or lose. I think you're kind of playing with house money a little bit, in that you come out of this 3-game stretch at worst 4-2, and head into homecoming at 4-2. If you could get this one, you're sitting pretty at 5-0. You at least at worst come back 5-1. With a sold-out homecoming crowd, and Michigan State, who's been playing pretty well, or better on offense. On offense.
On offense,
yeah. Their defense can't stop anybody, but you got to hope Illinois can knock off USC this week and keep that win kind of in the rankings. I don't know what rules the committee is going to play by, that Illinois was a top 10 team. Are we playing by the SEC rules? Are we playing that up? They're not ranked at the end of the year. Who knows? So closing thoughts, TJ, before we get you out of here.
This is the time, where we're starting to look around at some of the contenders for playoff spots and what they're doing each week. And we're allowed to do that as fans, for sure. For the players, this one is going to be all about mental preparation, mental focus, and being locked in on just those 60 minutes between the lines, your team against Iowa. Trying to block out all of the accolades that come your way after beating Illinois. The rat poison, right? That's exactly what Kurt Signetti, he might not use that term, but that's the type of thing he's guarding against this week. Blocking all of that out, blocking out the distractions of the crowd, blocking out anything that does not directly impact the play on the field, and being locked in. We as fans, we can look around and see what the other playoff contenders are doing, who's going to be those main rivals for a playoff bid. That's part of the fun of following a team that's really good. Every game feels like a big one. It feels like there's big stakes involved, which ratchets up the pressure, ratchets up the kind of the emotions involved. It can be stressful, but man, it's a lot of fun to follow this program right now. And I hope everybody's enjoying the ride. We don't know how long it's going to last, but it's awesome.
Yeah, it's been a tremendous ride so far, and being able to talk IU football and having people want to talk IU football other than me, like that meme with the kid playing the trumpet with his sister holding his ears, is quite refreshing.
Right.
So a few site housekeeping things. We are working in the background to fix the membership issue. I think we've narrowed it down, and we'll set an exact date, but we're shooting for October 1st. We're going to end up resetting everybody's password. We'll send out a temporary password and change the nothing is going to change price-wise for your price. If you signed up for $15 in July, it'll have to be renewed in July. You're good till next July. So none of that changes, but we are switching to where we're housing things. But we'll give you plenty of notice so that it's not you guys who need the password reset, that we're getting you to a temporary password to set up on a new platform. We're still staying with WordPress. Nothing like that changes, but it's where our subscriptions are housed that's changing. We'll have our weekly chat tonight. Rumor is Matt Weaver will be joining us to talk IU football, IU recruiting. Basketball coverage starts tomorrow. We are doing our countdown to tip-off. So we'll preview with 13 new guys on the basketball team, a whole bunch of new ladies on the women's team.
Yeah.
We figured, hey, let's get to know them a little bit, and then we'll have all our other sport coverage as well. And homecoming meetup Friday before at Heartwork. Time we'll announce the time as it gets closer, but that's the goal, is to meet up, have a couple beers, some pizza, talk some sports, and get ready for Indiana's homecoming game against Michigan State. So that's it. Indiana kicks off at Iowa, 3:30 p.m. on Peacock. If you don't have Peacock, come chat in our forums. We'll have you all updated. We'll post highlights from Twitter and X, and come chat with us as well. So hopefully people catch the game. Also, if you're listening on the radio, you can use the Varsity app. It's Learfield's college app. They have all the games that Learfield has the rights to, and Indiana's one of them. I believe it's free. So
Yep.
It is free, so you can listen to Don and Buck give me crap all game. That's what I do. It's the best way to listen to the game. So if you can't get it on Peacock, listen to it on the radio. Join us in the forums as well, and follow us at Hoosier_Huddle and HoosierHuddle.com. TJ, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Have a good week, everybody.